everybody. Please take your seats. Buenas tardes. Good afternoon. I'm Cecilia Munoz. I'm Tom's co-chair of the task force. I guess I should start the afternoon with an apology. I'm very sorry that I wasn't able to be with you earlier today and to help open this important day. I was called away at the request of the president. I just accompanied him up to the Hill, and I should apologize in advance in the event that they pull me in and out. There's just a number of things happening all at once, and I'm very sorry that they're happening today and this afternoon because we've been planning this session for a long time, and what we're doing today is really terribly important to the work of the task force. So I'm grateful to my fellow task force members and to Tom, of course, for leading the charge, and to all of you for coming and participating. It's an important day. And as you will have noticed, we're trying very hard to balance the breadth of what we're trying to do and to be able to talk about a number of critical issues important both to the political status question as well as to economic issues affecting the islands. So that's the reason that we wanted to make sure that we dug in deep in some of these breakout sessions that we held. But then we also wanted to come together and make sure that we were together as a task force looking at some particular issues. And so we're really grateful for everybody's willingness to really invest the day and do some really hard work digging into some challenging and important issues, and we thank our guests for providing important perspective. So with that, I guess I'm going to turn it over to you because you're going to facilitate this particular portion of the day.
Thank you very much. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Judith Henk. I'm a regional administrator with the Environmental Protection Agency. And we're going to do the impossible. We're going to talk about Vieques in a half hour. We can do it. And we're so fortunate that we have two wonderful speakers who are going to walk us through the issue, and then we're going to open up to the floor for questions or comments, and then open it to task force members very rapidly. Our guest speakers today are Lirio Marquez, the Executive Director of the Vieques Conservation Historical Trust, a very effective NGO on the island. And we'll also, in a few minutes, hear from Giovanna Negretti, the founding executive director of OESTE, translation, Have You Heard, a very effective statewide Latino civic organization in Massachusetts. So I will try to rapidly frame the issue so we can get into the details. As many of you know, Vieques is a stunningly beautiful island, 7 miles southeast of the Puerto Rico main island. There are about 9,300 residents. The median household income is $5,900, and unfortunately 64% of the people of the island live below poverty level. The island is 21 miles long and 4 miles wide, and residents live in the middle of the island. The east side of the island was the naval training range for many years, and the west side is a naval ammunition and support detachment. As you know, for 60 years, since the 1940s until 2003, Vieques was used for military training and operations by the Navy. This includes ship-to-shore gunfire, air-to-ground bombing by naval aircraft, and marine landings. Activities increased in 1975 when the nearby island of Culebra stopped being used for similar military exercises due to strong opposition. To make a long story short, military activity stopped on the island in 2003, and the Navy land was transferred to the Department of the Interior's Fish and Wildlife Services. There is a legacy of environmental contamination on the property and a lot of unexploded ordnance. In 2005, the property became a federal Superfund site, including large underwater areas. The Navy is the responsible party for cleanup, with oversight being provided by the EPA. I visited the site in March, and I can tell you this is a very challenging cleanup. The good news is some significant progress has been made in removing unexploded ordnance, but there are still acres and acres of land still to be cleared, and most of that is being done manually. The way it works is there's some manual removal, and then there's some detonation in place every 2 weeks or so. Community members have requested that the detonation be done in a contained chamber The Navy does not believe that that is feasible and believes that it's more dangerous to actually be moving the munitions. The Navy has effectively recovered or destroyed bombs, projectiles, rockets, pyrotechnics, submunitions, and igniters, all on land. There's also a real challenge in that a lot of the property is heavily vegetated, so it's hard for people to get in there and do removal. So the Navy has asked to do a controlled burn, but that has been met with strong local opposition, and no regulatory decision has yet to be made. Trespassing on the land and in the water is a problem. There's a beautiful harbor, so understandably people with boats want to come and enjoy the beauty of the island, but if they put down their anchor, there's a risk that they will have something explode. And the Coast Guard and others have worked very hard to tell people to stay out of the harbor, stay off the land, but trespassing continues to be a problem. Local residents have expressed serious concerns about the health impacts from 60 years of military exercises. This is being examined by the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, ATSDR. They're a part of Health and Human Services. I think it's fair to say that many residents have not been satisfied with the ATSDR approach to the issue, and so ATSDR, in response to that, announced that they're taking a fresh look at some of the health issues on the island, and that fresh look should be done sometime this year. There are very serious economic challenges facing the island. Remember, again, 64% of the people live below poverty. The good news is there's tremendous potential for expanding tourism and creating jobs in the tourism sector. If you're ever on the island, you should go swim in the bioluminescent bay, which is spectacular, the most pristine of the 3 bioluminescent bays on Puerto Rico, and one of our guests will talk about that. So there's tremendous potential for job creation through tourism. There are some day-to-day challenges. There's no mass transit on the island. There's also not a very reliable ferry service. The ferry stops running at 6 o'clock. There's also very limited access to health care. So if you need to go to the main island for dialysis or chemotherapy, you really can't count on a reliable ferry service to get you back to the island. When I met with Mayor Evelyn Camacho in March, she said that the spotty ferry service is one of her major concerns. Again, on the more positive side, there's tremendous potential for the development of renewable energy. DOE is very interested in that. Residents pay very high electricity rates. And Vieques is just 20 miles from St. Thomas in the U.S. Virgin Islands, so it's really possible for collaboration. So I just wanted to touch on some of these major issues. It's now my pleasure to introduce Giovanna Negretti, who is the founding executive director of OISTE from Massachusetts, and I will turn the floor to her. Thank you.
We've been really focusing on looking towards the future and what kind of training we can provide that will match what these other departments are doing in terms of the ability to attract investment, so that we're training the workforce for the future in areas like green jobs, possibility for healthcare, allied health, etc. We toured along with everyone and received a lot of really interesting information from regional municipalities and regions, and municipalities, specifically around their interests, because we need to hear from you what you think, where the island can go and what kind of investments can be made, and how we can also better leverage our resources as we move forward. So everything from infrastructure we heard, and as well as issues like tourism and ecotourism. So it's all looking forward.
She now lives in Esperanza. I call her Tata, and she's a living reminder of what this island means to me. I lived in Vieques for a period of time when I was younger. When I was a child, after we left, my mother took me all the time back repeatedly throughout my childhood. I have my fondest memories of camping at Media Luna, eating fried fish and arepas at Tito Bloque, and strolling down what is now El Malecón. I'm sure you've all been there. My mother, who's a historian, journalist, and author, taught me the importance of understanding the historic background of issues in order to better tackle the current situations. So it's indeed an honor to talk about the future of Vieques, but without not honoring where we were and how we got here in the first place. So as you said, for over 200 days per year from 1941 to 2003,
The Navy used significant portions of the island of Vieques for training exercises and munition testing. During this period, the Navy tested nearly every kind of munition employed by the military. The Navy's presence and military practices on the island severely impacted the local population, most notably in the areas of health, economic development, and the environment. The people of Vieques showed tremendous resilience for 62 years, and they continue to do so today, but not without a cost. So now the Navy is gone, but we all know that that's half the battle. Today, as a result of 62 years of the Navy's military practices, the local economy has been destroyed. Currently, we see the effects of this through rapid gentrification, large numbers of displacements, and the lack of locally owned small businesses. People can't afford to buy homes. They're being outpriced by foreigners. There are no opportunities for higher education on the island, and there are very few opportunities for investment and/or small business loans. This reminds me of my Aunt Ferrer, Arbel Ferrer, an artist, an activist whose dream is to build an eco-park for children to play and enjoy the nature, but can't find the resources to do it. Or about Nestor Guichard, who has one of the only locally owned kayak tours of the Bahia Luminescente, which you were just talking about, who is being drowned by foreign-owned businesses with more resources. Health is another serious issue needing attention in Vieques. According to Dr. John Wargo, a scientist at Yale University, the Navy dropped over 100 million pounds of ordnance in Vieques. However, in spite of multiple requests from elected officials and community leaders, the Navy has refused to disclose the complete list of amounts of material sprayed, dropped, tested, and disposed of on the island and surrounding ocean during the 62 years of weapons testing. I ask you, how is this possible? This irresponsible action makes it almost impossible for scientists and environmentalists to determine the exact exposure of risks that the Viequenses were submitting